The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
My goodness, 7 wins, and the perspective changes incredibly. I mean, you look at Twitter, people are freaking out over this. They lost a 1-point game to a team that's a blue blood franchise that has won a bunch of Super Bowls with a Hall of Fame coach who's never had a losing season, a resuscitated quarterback who won a Super Bowl and went to another one, and the sky is falling. No, the sky is not falling. They've gone through 10 games. They're 7-3. Who among us wouldn't have taken 7-3 back in early September? And the teams that they have lost to, okay, the opening game. Yeah, rookie quarterback getting his feet wet against a pretty good team on the road. They lost to a Baltimore team that's contending for the Super Bowl. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they can't be ruled out. Come on. Relax. They have 7 games to go. And realistically, if they win 3 of them, they're probably going to be in the playoffs. If they win 4 of them, they will have an 11-win season for the first time since, they won the Super Bowl. Let's stop with this. Let's get over it. And the fact that the locker room was quiet last night after they lost, that the loss stings, that they're upset about this, and their standard is higher, good. Everything has changed, and it's changed so quickly you could get whiplash. Last year, okay, it was a team that was owned by Josh Harris, and they won 4 games. That's bad. But he didn't have time to do anything. And while this team was going through its last dysfunctional season under Ron Rivera, they were working behind the scenes to get some good people on the job, like Adam Peters, who has totally flipped over this roster, like Dan Quinn, who has, in fact, changed the culture, which is what Ron Rivera promised to do and said he did, but never did. And I look at the glass as being more than half full at this point. Yeah, it's a tough game at Philadelphia next week, and they may lose that. Not even next week. It's this week. It's on Thursday. They may lose that game. But look at the division. They've already dispatched with the Giants, who are dead. They stink. They lost yesterday in Germany. They subjected the Germans to that. The Dallas Cowboys are in complete free fall, and Washington still has to play them 2 more times. Cooper Rush not going to get it done. Looks like Dak Prescott is out for the rest of the year. And, yeah, if you want to play the schedule game, we can do that. We do that all the time. You don't know what's going to happen because in the NFL, bad teams beat good teams all the time. And Washington is a good team. Pittsburgh is a good team. Pittsburgh was a point better yesterday. Washington had a 10-point lead. Understand that. But Russell Wilson, not his first rodeo. And what he did to end the game, shame on Johnny Newton for jumping off sides, but, injuries start to mount up at this time of the year. And if Jonathan Allen was healthy, he would have been in the game at that point instead of Johnny Newton. A veteran would know not to jump off sides. And look, if Pittsburgh punts in that situation, which they were probably going to do, I mean, Mike Tomlin wasn't going to go for it there. If they punt, Washington gets the ball back maybe around its 20-yard line with no timeouts and a kicker who hadn't kicked in 3 years. Now, he did a pretty good job with that. Gonzalez hit, a 48 and a 41-yard field goal. They picked him up off the street. I think he wasn't signed until Saturday. But there's no guarantee in a pressure situation he's going to kick a game-winning field goal. So, there's a lot of things that you look at and you go, well, yeah, they lost the game, but they lost to a good team. And through 10 games, they've only had 3 losses. Let's not get carried away. If you want to play the scheduled game, as I say, at Philadelphia, then they get a nice little mini bye. They get 10 days off. They will play Dallas at home on November 24th. They will play a very bad Tennessee team the week after that at home. And then they get a badly needed bye.
It
now,
stings.
Excuse me.
And you can see that the guys are very passionate about wins and losses. And it means something.
I jumped the gun on Jaden Daniels. Sorry about that. Let me get that back to that in a second. I'll get back to Jaden Daniels. Yeah, they got Tennessee at home. Then they got a bye. Now, if there's one thing you want to kvetch about, maybe it's the fact that the league for the 3rd straight year has given them the latest bye possible. Week 14 is too late to have a bye. And when the league goes to 18 games, don't be surprised if there's 2 bye weeks built into that. When they get to 20 games, there will certainly be 2 bye weeks in that. But they got a bye. Then they're at New Orleans. Now, New Orleans made a coaching change, and they beat Atlanta yesterday, and that might not be as easy as it looked maybe a week or so ago. They got Philadelphia at home, and then they close out against Atlanta at home, and then at Dallas. I see 3 wins in there, and I see maybe 4 wins in there. And I look at this and I go, well, yeah, this is really a great situation to be in. And the nervous Nellies and the naysayers on Twitter yesterday, get over that. We've been doing that for a quarter of a century, and no one has done it more than I have. And I remember, if you want to go back, and it's even pre-Dan Snyder, if you want to go back to 1996, when they started the year 7-1, and just the way the schedule lined up, they took advantage of beating bad teams in that early part of the schedule, and then, just unbelievably collapsed, losing 2 one-point games to Arizona in unbelievably stupid ways with penalties at the end of both games that could have closed it out. And they missed the playoffs at 9-7. But I remember Darryl Green, who at that point had played in 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 of them, and most of his teammates, if not all of his teammates from the glory years, were gone. And he said, "We're not that good," and they weren't that good. The 6-2 team under Jim Zorn in his first year, where he took some gambles. He went for it on 4th down, was able to pick up 4th downs running the football. They were a team built to run by Joe Gibbs the year before, and Zorn, first time calling plays, took some gambles, and they paid off. But I remember this. They had beaten Detroit to get to 6-2, and they played the Steelers on a Monday night, November 3rd, and just like yesterday, they wore those all burgundy uniforms looking like Dr. Pepper cans, and Pittsburgh showed no respect for them. They started off the game with an onside kick. That tells you what they thought of them. Also, Corey Raymer, who was the center for Washington, and this was unusual in those days because when Joe Gibbs came back, everybody got all excited. Dan Snyder expanded the stadium to 91,000 seats. I think it's down to about 63 now. And people came for Pittsburgh. Corey Raymer said we had to use a silent snap count, and they were non-competitive. They lost 23-6. They lost 4 of the next 5 and finished the year 8-8. I don't see that happening here. I don't. And most important of all is the standard that they've been talking about ever since they got together for their first off-season workouts. This is something that Dan Quinn has stressed over and over and over again, the standard. And Barry's Verluga's got a column today with the headline, "When a loss stings, it can only mean one thing. The standard has changed." This was Jaden Daniels with one of his first comments to the media after yesterday's loss.
It stings. And you can see that the guys are very passionate about wins and losses. And it means something to them, matters. So that's where I kind of took away, like, hey, everybody's mad. It matters to them. Like, there's nothing we could do about it. We could just go on to the next.
Offense never really seemed to get into that efficient flow you've had all year. What did Pittsburgh do that kind of messed that up?
Yeah, I mean, hats off to them. Just a great scheme that they had. But, we didn't make the plays and opportunities when they presented itself. So from there, it's like, man, going down, maybe if I make a throw, we make a catch, something like that. But they just have a very good front, like a really good front, and they try their best to get their guys one-on-one. So that's kind of what they did the whole second half.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind, in losing this game by a point to a good team, Jaden Daniels played probably what was his worst game of the year. Maybe you could point to the opener against Tampa, but he ran 16 times and was Rookie of the Week in that loss. Yesterday, he had running numbers like Peyton Manning. He had 3 carries for 5 yards. That's not going to happen very often. And when it does, they're probably going to lose by more than 1 point. He made some terrific throws to Terry McLaurin, who had a big day. McLaurin catching 5 passes for 113 yards. Zach Ertz caught 4 for 31, but he had a really bad drop there. And if you want to complain about the spot that he got at the end of the game on 4th down, You can, but there really wasn't enough to overturn it on replay. That was automatically reviewed because it was inside of 2 minutes. But it looked to me like it was too close to call, and since it was called on the field short of the first down, you had to go with that. You had two muff punts, and one of them resulted in a turnover. This is a team that had only 3 turnovers coming into the game. I mean, come on. 3 turnovers in 9 games? That shouldn't happen. And what happened on those 2 punts also shouldn't happen, as Zacchaeus hit him in the face both times. I remember that was the end of Deion Sanders when he started fielding punts off his face mask. And I think they're going to make a change there coming up for the Philadelphia game. But those kind of things bit them. And I'll tell you something else about the poise of Jaden Daniels. When De'Ami Brown dropped what was a touchdown pass that he should have been able to catch with oven mitts, it hit him right in the hands, and he dropped it. And Jaden Daniels smiled, and he still got him in the end zone with an Eckler run. Still got him in there. So, I look at his poise and how he handles adversity, how he handled that situation. That tells you a lot. Tells you a lot for the long run. And also what you learn about this team is how they handle it in the locker room. And we don't usually hear from Sam Cosmi. He's not a big rah-rah speech guy. He's the one that gave the post-game speech. And he said, I wanted to let them know not to let this snowball into this week. I wanted to let them know that we are still special. No matter what, we keep fighting. I wanted them to know that this should hurt. This should hurt your core. This means a lot to us. Winning is the ultimate goal. And that's what you're looking for here. You're looking for a team that has a new standard. Dan Quinn talks about standard all the time. And this was a question that he got from Tom Lavero in the postgame news conference.
Do you think this was any kind of fair measure of where your team is and where they want to be?
I would hope that the missed opportunities are the lesson to apply, because I thought, it was just maybe a little uncharacteristic. I thought maybe a few drops, maybe a few plays that weren't quite like us. I love that we were in this kind of fight. These are the kind of ones that you need to build some resilience and some resolve. But we are establishing that kind of toughness and identity that we want to be about. But as far as a measurement, I knew this was going to be a tough game. Knew they were coming off their bye. We were coming into it. They played well. They've had some changes with Russ at QB, and so they've really been effective running the ball, over the last 3 weeks. So that was one that we knew we had to stand up and make some plays. So it played out probably like I thought in terms of how they would go attack, but the missed opportunities on this one stings the most.
A couple of paragraphs from Barry Zerluga's column in the Post. And again, what he says, if it stings, that's good. That shows you where this team has moved to. And he writes, the Commanders don't consider themselves the cute little story of the first half of the NFL season, a franchise writing itself after so many listless campaigns. Now, no, these Commanders consider themselves a threat because of the way they work, the way they play. A standard that they didn't uphold as a 24-14 lead became the first home loss of the season. And he says how these Commanders seem to handle a loss that dropped them to 7-3. The what if from one Sunday turns into next week's never again. That comes from winning, but it also comes from what's expected of each other each day is different than it has been. And I'll take you back. This goes back 10 years. And it was the first year that Jay Gruden was here. This was after things bottomed out under Mike Shanahan, after they had the magical RG3 year in 2012. And then in 2013, they went 3-13. So they brought in Jay Gruden, who was supposed to be the quarterback guru, supposed to fix Robert Griffin III, which he never did. And he hated RG3. Who wanted to do his own thing and put out like hashtags, the movement, and said that the players were going to be able to call the plays. And Jay was okay with it. I mean, it's complete nonsense. But I remember this. They played a Monday night game, and I looked this up. This was November 3rd, so it was about the same period of time we're in now. They played, that game was October 6th. That was earlier in the season. They played October 6th of 2014. Seattle was the defending champs. It was a Monday night game. and Seattle won the game by 10, and it really didn't even seem that close. It was a 27-17 win for Seattle. And from what was reported from those who were in the locker room, like Jason Reed of the Post, there was just a lot of joking around and towel throwing and just, grab-assing and things that don't usually happen after a loss. And Brian Arakpo got up in front of the media and said, well, we just went toe-to-toe with the defending champs. No, you didn't. You lost by 10. And Washington playing a blue blood team yesterday and hanging in there till, well, I guess you could say until Johnny Newton jumped off sides. They were still a possibility to win that game. And they lost by 1 point, and they're upset about it. And it stings. And nobody's saying, hey, we just went toe-to-toe with Russell Wilson, who won a Super Bowl and went to another one, and a Mike Tomlin coach team. No, there's none of that. And that's a good sign. That's where they are right now. Anyway, you think Tomlin really would have snapped the ball there? He's got an answer to that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got Bram coming up at 11 o'clock. He called yesterday's game. Interested to hear his thoughts on the Commanders' loss. And, again, no medals for trying, but it's only 3 losses through 10 games. And those who think the ship be sinking, I don't think so. Yeah, they got a tough game coming up against Philadelphia, and it's going to be tough to win in that environment. But Eagles played on the road yesterday. They destroyed the Cowboys, who are dead. They had to travel back to Philadelphia, and it's a short trip for Washington to get there. And, 2 big weapons that they missed yesterday. One, Brian Robinson, who also missed the Baltimore game, which they lost. And Marshawn Lattimore, who they picked up. Now, he hasn't played for him yet, but you saw what happened with Benjamin St. Juste trying to cover Mike Williams at the end of the game. I think he makes a difference there. Also, the great touchdown catch by George Pickens, that was unbelievable. He was able to contort his body while he was in the air to make that catch. I mean, that was just a spectacular catch. And they were knocking on the door. They were probably going to score anyway there. But I think it helps if you have a guy who's been an all-pro corner before. They don't have all-pro corners on the team right now. The secondary, we know, has been a weakness for them throughout the season. So I think it makes a difference if they come back. All right. I was talking about the game in 2008. And Mike Tomlin, then a young coach, he just a couple of years into his tenure as head coach of the Steelers, and they come into FedEx Field on a Monday night to face a 6-2 Washington team. Jim Zorn is like, whoa, where did they get this guy? How come he never got a chance to be a head coach before? He seems to be great at calling plays. He's a natural. Nobody knew that down the road we consider him to be one of the biggest boobs who ever coached here, any sport. But at the time, he was the toast of the town, and our friends over at the other radio station had a promotion going horny for Zorny. And it kind of started to collapse in a big way for that Monday night game, which they played in 2014. And they played, it was November, the Monday night in November, and they lost that game 23-6. And Tomlin showed no respect by starting off the game with an onside kick. In this game, he tried something pretty early, which you wouldn't expect. Up 7-0. They tried a fake punt from deep in their own territory, and the receiver was wide open. He just dropped the ball. But in this case, this, I think, was more, believe it or not, I think it was more a sign of respect than anything else for Washington with what he did, and here's how he explained it.
You can't come in hostile environments versus good people and not be aggressively pursue victory. We're not going to live in our fears. That's just how we get down. Same thing on the fake punt. That is me. I own that. I'll do it again. But we didn't execute it. And so it was a bad idea.
Well, it was an idea that could have really changed the flow of the game, and maybe it doesn't wind up being a one-point game. Maybe Steelers win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. But it didn't work out for them. But again, I think he's thinking okay, I got to do something here because he talked about the hostile environment. I've talked to a couple of people who were at the game yesterday. You get estimates anywhere from 60-40 to 70-30 as to how many Steeler fans were there, and I think you could tell from television, even though they gave out the burgundy towels, I think there were like 50,000 distributed. Good idea from Brian Mitchell. When it came to crunch time, the Steeler fans who got those burgundy towels used them to wipe their nose and then twirled their terrible towels and created an environment which was very tough for Washington and probably contributed to Johnny Newton jumping offside. Question is, what was Tomlin thinking there? On one hand, you could say that's pretty standard operating procedure that you try and draw them off sides, which they were able to do with a rookie who, again, wouldn't have been in there if Jonathan Allen was healthy. They would have made sure they had veterans up front, but Newton's playing now because Allen is out, and he jumped off sides. And generally, you take the clock penalty or in midfield, and you go back and you punt and you try and pin Washington back deep. So there's that. But Washington didn't have any timeouts at that point. There's no guarantee that Daniels is able to drive him down the field. And if they set up for a winning field goal, even though the guy you picked up off the street who hadn't kicked in 3 years made a 48-yarder and a 41-yarder, no guarantee in a pressure situation to win the game, he hits it. So a lot of things had to happen. But, you have to ask the question, well, what was Mike Tomlin planning to do?
Assume you weren't going to go for it there on fourth down. You're trying.
We'll never know, will we? I'm a degenerate.
We will never, ever. I know. Look, he's been around a long time. You do exactly what he did. You take the penalty for too much time, and then you punt the ball to Washington. And that's not. That's kind of the way it worked out. We follow up on this in Ravens. It was actually Ravens Review last Friday, and the terrible calls that were made in that game. And Joe Burrow could certainly make a case that he got completely hosed. It was roughing the passer on that last play. They should have gotten another opportunity to get the 2-point conversion, but they didn't get it, and Baltimore won the game. And the feeling is, just bad officiating. Baltimore had a couple of bad calls on them as well. And if they wanted to fix this, they could probably fix this. But for whatever reason, they don't. And Connor Orr of SI wrote a really good column the next day. He said, after Thursday's Ravens-Bengals tilt, a game that ended on a failed 2-point conversion attempt by the Bengals in which the quarterback was pawed in the face mask by a defensive lineman and a tight end was being dragged down by a pair of defenders like a 1990s NBA center, it became fairly clear that the officiating crisis we've been asking NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell about for years now is simply a beautiful glitch. He said Sam Darnold had his helmet turned almost completely around on a Thursday night game 2 weeks ago, triggering a game-ending safety and robbing the Vikings of a chance of a 95-yard drive with a little less than 2 minutes to play. Al Michaels from Thursday night said, too many games end this way. They just do. You miss calls, the whole thing. So frustrating for the fans. So frustrating. And the point that he makes is the NFL could fix this if they want to. And he writes, when Roger Goodell, during the Tonight Show-style interview with reporters at this year's Super Bowl. Remember, he sat on a stool with an open-collared shirt and was kind of asked questions by one of the NFL media people. He casually praised the job of his officials. It should have told us all we need to know. The NFL doesn't care that it's broken because we're going to talk about how it's broken and then tune in to see if anything has been done about the brokenness, right? He said if a new iPhone exploded during a shareholder meeting, one would assume that the company's CEO would treat the issue with some sense of urgency because of the stakes. Exploding iPhones make less money, so you lash out at their creators. You issue a public apology, or you simply assume the position of a person doing something about it to make us all feel better because technically there's a chance we would buy some other kind of non-exploding phone. The NFL knows you're not going anywhere, and in some twisted way probably knows how much we enjoy freaking out about the high-profile instances of officiating ineptitude. If Goodell and the owners cared, something would have been done about it by now. If we cared enough, we'd have stopped watching already. And that is the bottom line for the NFL, is the bottom line, that the numbers are great. The television ratings are great. We're going to have Thanksgiving games in a few weeks. People are going to watch those games. 50 million people are going to watch. And whether there's bad officiating or not, they're going to come back and watch again the next week. That's the way it works. Dean Blandino was on Friday with Dan Patrick about this particular game from last Thursday night and the overall officiating as it is right now. And Dean Blandino, the former head of officiating, now working for Fox, he's the guy that comes on to explain calls and so forth. And, yeah, I mean, he's basically in agreement with Connor Orr that if the league really wanted to fix this, they could fix it.
Nobody wants the game to be officiated perfectly more than the officials, and we know perfection is not a reasonable expectation. But yeah, they get together. You know, the contact on Burrow, the umpire is the other official, and in addition to the referee, who could see that. And if the umpire sees it and says, "Hey, you know, I've got contact to the head neck area," okay, great, let's drop a flag. Or if another official, I think at the goal line, you're going to have one set of eyes on each of those receivers. So there's going to be less help in that action. But yeah, absolutely, you want them to get together if somebody sees something a different way.
Okay, but do you see a point where we start with the final 2 minutes, where we're there's a the eye in the sky is able to say, guys, you missed this, let's clean this up? Like, do we get to that point where this is what we're going to do, and let's say we just start out with the final 2 minutes?
We're headed in that direction, absolutely. You look at the couple of weeks ago, right? Sam Darnold, Thursday night, we don't get the face mask in the end zone, big play, safety. So yeah, we're headed in that direction. I think the competition committee has always taken a more measured approach. And right now there's some situations when there's a flag down, replay can assist. I think we're going to see, I don't know when, if it's next year, if it's 3 years, 5 years, we're going to see somebody up there that's going to say, hey, and the last 2 minutes is a perfect starting place, or is it scoring plays? Is it turnovers? Because officials aren't perfect. There's 150 to 155 plays a game. Overwhelming number of decisions are correct, but there's 4 or 5 plays that really affect the outcome, that decide the outcome, and you got to be perfect on those plays. And a lot of them happen in the last 2 minutes. So yeah, it's a great starting place, and I think that'll be an off-season discussion with the committee for sure.
I never understood this with the NBA, that the star players would get calls or the benefit of the doubt, because I always thought they're the stars, they don't need the benefit of the doubt. It's the guy who's the ninth man on the bench. Does Mahomes get preferential treatment because he's Patrick Mahomes? Did Brady get preferential treatment because he was Tom Brady? And if so, why?
I think that's a perception. I really do. High profile. Look, Tom Brady, probably the greatest of all time. Patrick Mahomes on his way there. So there's going to be more eyeballs. There's going to be more attention, whether they get the call or they don't. But when you look at the numbers, and I don't know the numbers this year, but whenever we did a deep dive, it wasn't the Tom Brady's or the Peyton Mannings, or the Patrick Mahomes that were getting all the calls. It was more even and balanced. And look, there's kind of this perception that Joe Burrow doesn't get those calls. I read today that he needs to start arguing more. He needs to start complaining more. The officials don't, the good ones, that doesn't affect them. They want to get it right. And it doesn't matter if it's Tom Brady or if it's a backup quarterback that's in the game. So, I think that's more perception. I don't think that's reality. But look, sometimes perception becomes reality.
Yeah, but Brady jawing at you and you're an official, that doesn't impact?
It could go one or two ways, because I've heard officials that said, you're not going to get that. The more you jaw at me, the more I'm not, like, oh, this guy, like, all right, shut up, And I work with Tom now, and I love him, and he's a sweetheart. I can't believe I say, you used to complain a lot. That's not what I'm getting from you today.
What current rule do we have to do away with?
I honestly think today, and I never would have said this 10 or 15 years ago, I think it's what we're talking about. I think it is giving the officials, giving somebody the opportunity to help correct some of these mistakes. And I use mistakes, I think it's just lack of a better term, because the game is so fast.
But Dean, we keep hearing we need to make them full-time. Like, what does being full-time, your eyesight doesn't get better. Like, you missed that call.
That call happens. That call is missed whether they're full-time or not. And then during the season, they are as full-time as anybody else. They spend hours upon hours upon hours looking at film. You're never going to prevent that call. You're going to have situations where they miss calls. I don't think it's full-time. I think we've gotten to the point where the technology is so good and it can be seamless, where if you and I are sitting up there and I go, oh man, we just missed a hit on the quarterback. Hey guys, put a flag down. I think that's where we're headed. I think we got to get there. I think it has to be limited. What we don't want is somebody re-officiating every aspect of every play. You can't do that.
Yeah, but there are some calls that demand the eye in the sky. Now, also, we saw at the end of the game yesterday with the play to Zach Ertz, the fourth down pass, when you saw it in real time with the yellow line there, as I did, I thought he got the first down. He did not, according to the officials. And then when they looked at it, because that's what happens inside of 2 minutes, there's no challenge, but the league automatically reviews close plays like that, and they looked at it, and they still didn't give him the first down. Did that work as it's supposed to work? I guess it did. But is Washington satisfied? Are the fans satisfied? No. And I'm sure that there are people, screaming today, oh, they got to find a better way to come up with that. Yeah, I have lasers. We're still having first downs measured by two old guys bringing chains to the field. So there's that. But I think there is something to what Connor Orr says, that the league likes us talking about it. It creates conversation throughout the week. But things evolve. The TV coverage gets better and better. There's more cameras. There's more clarity. And down the line, I think they will find a better way to do this. So, and I have friends who say just get away from it entirely. Like, it just holds up the game. It's a waste of time. It's a game played by humans, officiated by humans, and be done with it. I just saw this on Twitter, and it's not really a positive here. Brian Robinson, who didn't play yesterday, is kind of lashing out at the fans here, and I'm not sure this is the right way to go. There's some words in here I can't use, but he put this out within the last hour. He says, being injured is one thing, ... but to hear backlash from MFs that sit on the couch every Sunday, and he used a term which I won't use here, don't nobody say S when the parlays hit 2. You have no humility on this app. I wonder why some players don't respect the fans. I guess he's responding to people being critical of him from sitting out. Maybe he's talking about the angry gamblers who lost money yesterday. When he says you have no humility on this app, well, duh. I mean, that's pretty much the story of Twitter. It is, as a friend of mine calls it now, a 280-character rock fight. But to say, I wonder why some players don't respect the fans, that's territory you probably don't want to get into, and it's not in any way representative of what I've observed about him in his 2 years plus here, 2.5 years. I don't think that's the case. How much did they miss him yesterday? I think they missed him a hell of a lot. Not just in the running totals where they got, basically run over. The Steelers had 140 yards rushing. Washington only had 60, but also to have the play action available when you have Brian Robinson and have the defense to bite on the fake, I think you're going to get a lot more production than you got yesterday. Well, you certainly will. Jaden Daniels, 3 carries for 5 yards. That may turn out to be a career low for him. Whenever his career ends, and hopefully it's way down the line, maybe 15 years from now, maybe even 20 years from now, we may look at this game and say, ooh, Steelers had an answer that day, but they managed to fix it. That was a problem, but I think it's related to Brian Robinson not playing in the game. And, again, you look at all the numbers across the board. Washington has been consistently winning time of possession. In this game, they got clobbered. Steelers held the ball for 36 minutes, okay? Total yards, Washington had 242. Pittsburgh had 312. Some of that was the fact that they did get some big plays in the passing game, and Russell Wilson really never did. I mean, his numbers in the passing game kind of pedestrian. He was 14 of 28 for 195 yards and threw a pick, okay? He did throw a couple of touchdown passes, and they did outscore Washington by score 14-3 coming down in the last quarter. third and fourth quarter when they were down 10 and coming back to win. But overall, this was one of the weakest games that they have played. So in their worst moment, they lose to a really good team by 1 point. I again, no medals for trying, but I look at this and I go, well, there's real encouragement there. And every team is going to go through games like this, and especially a rookie quarterback. And for the first time, when they really put some pressure on him, he did look like a rookie, but they're playing without a starting offensive tackle. Andrew Wiley was crap last year. Somehow or another, he's been very good this year. He didn't play yesterday. Biotish, the center, had to go out for a while with an ankle injury. He's been maybe their best lineman, most consistent lineman throughout the season. They had a swing tackle who couldn't dress yesterday because of injury. I mean, they were thin, and they still managed to do a good job. In terms of of penalties, that was a problem. They only had 5 of them, but they just seemed to come at the wrong time. And that Steelers' first drive where they got the 16-yard touchdown pass to Pickens, that was set up by a couple of bad penalties on the team there. And then the penalty that ended the game with Johnny Newton jumping offside, that's going to happen with a rookie. And it's going to happen against a veteran quarterback who knows what he's doing. And that's what happened. Yeah, sure. I mean, Johnny Newton should have been told specifically, hey, Rook, this is maybe your first rodeo with this. It's not ours. No way Tomlin's snapping the ball. Just stay in your stance. They'll either call timeout or they'll take the penalty and punt. So don't move. Don't jump off sides. But he did. He wanted to make a play. He was anxious to make a play. If they make a stop there, Washington's in great shape. They get the ball at midfield with Jaden Daniels. Are you kidding me? And I think even they assumed. I even thought when the Steelers scored like 2.5 minutes to go and got the ball back to Washington before that drive ended with the fourth down pass to Ertz, I thought maybe the Steelers left too much time on the clock. The way that was going, I thought maybe they'd continue to run it down and maybe get in the end zone with less than a minute left, which was really going to put Washington up against the back there. But they scored with 2.5 minutes to go, and I think most people, after watching Jaden Daniels this year, felt like, okay, here we go. The kid's going to write another chapter in his story. He's going to take – this is what the elite do. Elite quarterbacks in that situation, with your team down 1, you take them down the field and you kick the winning field goal, and everybody goes home happy, and the storybook continues as you go on to Philadelphia. But that's not the way it worked out, and many people are upset about that. Coming up, we'll hear more from the it's losing locker room, but I think an overall feel coming out of that game that's positive heading into the last 7 games of the season. We'll get to that and much more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Ding dong, the Giants are dead. Ding dong, the Cowboys are dying. And yes, yesterday was a loss. There's no medals for trying. But boy, with 7 games to go in the season, the outlook looks bright. And to see the gloom and doom around town, get a grip, people. I mean, this is like the days when they were Super Bowl contenders. They lose a game, and Mondays are brutal around here. There's a lot to look at from yesterday and say, boy, that was their worst effort, and they lost by 1 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team has a chance. And the Super Bowl talk that we had going into Sunday, maybe is a little far-fetched and maybe still is, but they got everything to play for right now. And if they can win this game on Thursday in Philadelphia, and they've played well in this spot. Remember during the pandemic year, they played an 11-0 Steelers team with Alex Smith playing on one leg. That was after he came back after that horrific broken leg, and they won that game. They have gone to Philadelphia and beaten an undefeated Eagles team. And this is not an undefeated Eagles team. They've shown some warts along the way. Now, yesterday they played a completely dysfunctional Dallas Cowboys, and I'll swim around in their misery coming up, Dallas's misery coming up. But they're beatable. They're beatable, and they've won games in this spot with far weaker teams. They're 3.5-point underdogs heading in. They got 2 key players who, if they come back, could make a huge difference. One of them Brian Robinson, who was clearly missed yesterday. They had only, 60 yards running, and I think it also hurt Jaden Daniels in his ability to run. He only had 5 yards on 3 carries. That, they're not going to win a whole lot of games the way they play, the way their offense works. If he has a day like that, Pittsburgh had an answer for that, and part of it was that they knew that, on the play action, that there really wasn't as much to be concerned about. And plus, they had a pass rush, which created all kinds of problems for Daniels yesterday. He did not have his best day, whether it was the rush or not. He was off, and that's going to happen. Nobody's going to have great days every week. Tom Brady had off days. It happens. And I think that you come out of this game, at least I do, feeling like, okay, they're right where they would hope to be at this point. 10 games into the season, 7-3, half game out of first place, playing for first place at Philadelphia. That's a scenario that anybody would have taken earlier in the season. Next step, you get in a game like this where you're up 10 in the third quarter. You got to have that killer instinct. You got to be able to close it out. And as Terry McLaurin said, they're not quite there yet.
That's not how we wanted to finish that game. We had our opportunities, especially offensively, but you got to give credit to them. They finished the game better than we did. When they had to make a play, they did. And so we don't have too long to really think about this one.
Yeah, the play that they made was the touchdown pass to Mike Williams, who just got there. They made that trade for him last week. The Jets had enough of him. He was thrown under the bus by Aaron Rodgers, and we'll get to the whole Aaron Rodgers mishigas coming up. But that was a problem yesterday. That when they needed to make that play, they couldn't make it, and we're all getting tired of seeing the back of Benjamin St. Juice jersey in plays like that. But also, on the good sign here, and I think this is a part of where this team is going right now, there's a standard that they have that this isn't good enough, what happened yesterday, and accountability. Here's St. Just on the TD.
Just got to play. Just got to know my personnel and just play the fade and come back down to play any other routes. Sometimes I get caught up in trying to make the play so much that I try to guard everything. In these situations, you got to pick and choose, and you got to pick the right option.
You say pick the right option. Like what in your mind?
I say I got to pick the right option.
So in that one, like what are you looking for then?
You got to play the fade. That's what he likes to do. That's what Russ is good at. We'll come down and tackle it if they have a first down or anything else, and they have to go 10 more plays, instead of a touchdown.
Yeah, Dan Quinn said this all week. He said about Russell Wilson, he throws that deep ball on an arc better than anybody, and he put it right in the right place for a guy who's just really getting a hold of their offense. He'd been there just a few days, but he got past St. Just. St. Just needed to keep him out of the end zone and didn't do it and made the touchdown, which ultimately proved to be the winning points in the game. As for more on accountability and Johnny Newton jumping off sides and how they have his back, this was Jaden Daniels on what he saw from his teammate and the way that everybody, if you saw this, and by the way, it's a great picture on the front page of the Post with Russell Wilson fist pumping after drawing them off sides, and to the left of him is Johnny Newton with his hands on his head, like he knew he screwed up there. Okay, he made the mistake, but there's nobody ripping anybody behind their back or anything like that. This is Jaden Daniels on that play.
It's not all on him. That's what everybody's going to see, just that one big play, but it's not all on him, and we're all together. We got his back no matter what people outside the building are saying or are thinking. Man, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's in the building and how we love each other and how we support each other and have each other's backs.
Jaden, I remember after the Tampa game that week you told us that you don't like to lose when we asked you about bouncing back from it. Games like that, games like the Ravens game, this game, these losses, how much more do those motivate you in terms of what this team is trying to build bigger picture?
I mean, I don't like losing, so I don't want to feel like this feeling. I don't want to have losses. I'm competitive. I want to win in everything I step foot and I put my mind to. So I wouldn't say it's any motivation. It's like, man, how can I go back to working and kind of get this feeling out of my system? That's win, lose, or draw. When we win, I want to keep winning. we lose, I don't want to lose. I want to win again. So I kind of had the same approach.
Yeah, and what you hear from the coaches about him is his consistency. Bad loss, he comes in with the same attitude to go to work. He'll be back at work today looking at the tape and probably working Tuesday, which is a day off. He's got that work ethic to stay with it, and, win or lose. And that's, that's what another thing Dan Quinn talked about is you play each week, you prepare the best you can, and at the end of the year, you stack them up and you see what you got. And the reality is, with 7 games to go, they win 3, they're going to be in the playoffs. They win 4, maybe they're competing for the division title. They win 5 out of 7, they're probably going to win the division. That's where they are right now. That's a hell of a good spot to be in. As for Newton, he did seem to be distraught as he came off the field, but I think the support that he got from his teammates and the way he felt about it really reflected in the way he approached the media.
My teammates have been great. It's a big brotherhood in here. All the coaches, staff, everybody came up to me, supported me, had my back, and just told me don't let that play get to me, just put it behind me and get ready for Philly.
And Newton's been playing great. He was a guy who was a real question mark coming into the season. The reason that he slipped to the second round coming out of Illinois was because he had a foot injury. Then he gets to the offseason workouts. He's rehabbing that, and they look at his other foot, and they go, oh, man, that's going to need surgery. So he had surgery on that. There was a question whether he was going to start the year on IR. He didn't. He wasn't playing as much because John Allen was healthy. Now John Allen's out for the year with a torn pec, and so he's a starting tackle. And he made a big mistake at the end of the game. Okay, that happens. Did it cost them a game? I'm not sure it did. It didn't help, but they were still going to get the ball pretty deep on a punt, and Daniels was going to have to take them down the field against the defense, which had bottled them up in the run all day. 3 carries for 5 yards, and he really didn't have a good day throwing the ball, mainly because he was under pressure. This is a guy who started out the season with 81% efficiency as a passer. Yesterday, pedestrian numbers, 17 of 34 for 202 yards. Didn't turn it over, but 50% passing in this day and age, that's not great. That's not great. And he did seem to be off. He missed some. He had some drops, no question about it, some big drops in that game. But he kept coming back, and I think he did a great job with what he was asked to do. And, now the key is, can they get themselves back on track and get rolling again? Something else to get to here, and this is again what Tony likes to say, is that success means nothing unless your enemies are failing. The Dallas Cowboys are a complete mess right now. They are an absolute mess. They lost yesterday to the Philadelphia Eagles by a score of 34-6, 28 points, and this may have changed the complexion of the game. Who knows? They're down 7-3, second and goal from the Eagles' 3-yard line. Cooper Rush, who's now going to have to finish the season, it looks like. It appears that Dak Prescott is going to have season-ending surgery on his hamstring, which they say is now separated from the bone. He had an open CD Lamb in the end zone for a go-ahead score. Lamb couldn't see the ball because the sun was in his eyes. I remember I think they were still the Redskins at that time. Maybe they were Washington football team. But Dustin Hopkins, who's now kicking for Cleveland, missed a field goal because the sun was in his eyes from the late afternoon sun that comes in to this AT&T Stadium, the big monstrosity that Jerry Jones built. And because Lamb couldn't see the pass because of the sun, they settled for a field goal, wouldn't score the rest of the way, lost 34-6. Jerry Jones always talks to the media after the game. They brought up the sun. He says, we do know where the damn sun's going to be at our own stadium. And they said, well, Jerry, if you know it's going to be there and you might be, driving to that end of the field, why not put up curtains? He says, well, let's just tear down the damn stadium and build another one. I said, you kidding me? And he got under Jerry's skin on that one. And as far as the curtains go, they actually do use curtains at that stadium. He's saying, yeah, they know where the sun is and that kind of thing. Well, they've used curtains for concerts, basketball games, and other events. And Jones said, everybody's got the same thing. Every team that comes in here has the same issues. They know where the sun's going to be. Every team has the same thing. The Cowboys don't practice there. and the sun is only an issue in the late afternoon games, which they generally play because the Cowboys are gold on television. And so Jones was asked, well, should Mike McCarthy call plays differently, knowing where the sun should be? I'm saying the world knows where the sun is. We got to know that almost a year in advance. So someone asked me about the sun. What about the sun? Where's the moon? And so Lamb was asked, well, would you like to see curtains there? He said, yeah, 1,000%. Will he bring it up to Jerry? He says, I'm doing my job right now. And then Jerry said, we're fine. Everybody plays in the sun out here. So that really was an issue. And then Micah Parsons, who's, their star pass rusher back on the field now after injury, looked at the loss yesterday, 32 net yards passing for Cooper Rush in this game. And he was asked about Mike McCarthy and his future. And this is what he said. He said, Mike McCarthy can leave and go wherever he wants. Guys I kind of feel bad for, guys like Zach Martin, guys who might be on their last year, on their way out, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for. You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. He said, as for the question of whether McCarthy will coach the Cowboys next year, that's above my pay grade. But when he says Mike McCarthy can leave and go whenever he wants, what does that tell you? It's like, get me the hell out of here. That is an absolute mess there. And then you have the New York Jets. The New York Jets, who were non-competitive yesterday in an ugly loss to the Arizona Cardinals. They were really, I would say, non-competitive in this game, and they were playing for their season. They were 3-6 coming into this game. And Steve Serby writes in his column today, only the Jets could promise their tortured and tormented faithful a season of hope and great expectations and turn it into the butt fumble. Aaron Rodgers, and they've given Aaron Rodgers the whole team. They allowed him to get rid of Robert Saleh. He didn't have to do the dirty deed, but they got rid of him. He wanted Devontae Adams. They traded for Devontae Adams. He was bad. He was 22 of 35. And, everybody looks at Tom Brady and goes, well, Tom Brady played effectively into his 40s, won a Super Bowl at 42, 43. Aaron Rodgers got something left in the tank. No, he doesn't. He's done. He said Rodgers was brought in to be the savior, to win these games, to laugh in the face of adversity, to lift all the Jets in their desperate hour, and instill the belief in the huddle and throughout the team. And the agonizing flight back home carried a future first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterback and a season that has not been saved, and a team and a franchise that has been powerless to save itself from itself. Same older Rodgers, quarterback of the dead team walking. Yards per attempt, 4.3. Longest completion, 15 yards to Breece Hall. Longest completion to Devontae Adams, 14 yards. Longest completion to Garrett Wilson, 12 yards. Rodgers said, you're not going to beat anybody scoring 6 points. Garrett Wilson, who caught that pass, says basically they're trash.
At the end of the day, it's all about Sundays. I say that all the time, but when you go out and play bad, you got to, maybe fake it a little bit to make it seem real, but the energy's not there because we're playing like trash. So, that's how I see it.
Playing like trash. Devontae Adams said that Rodgers had the Michael Jordan effect on the team in Green Bay. Adams said about the Jets, if Michael Jordan was on this team, he wouldn't be happy. Serby writes, the 3-7 Jets are still mathematically alive, but not mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Dead team walking, limping, crawling towards a 14th consecutive season without a playoff berth. A 40-year-old quarterback, no longer the same old Rodgers, and a season left stranded in the desert. There was no oasis in the desert for Rodgers, no fountain of youth for him to look and feel forever young. This is a dead team walking, and there is some Schadenfreude here that I must admit, after 25 years of dysfunction with the burgundy and gold, to look at what's happened to the Dallas Cowboys, who have mismanaged the salary cap and are now going to have to play the rest of the year without their $60 million a year quarterback, and the New York Jets, who basically turned the entire franchise over to a now over-the-hill quarterback. Man, look at what you got here. You got disaster across the board. And in a very short period of time, you get a general manager, a real general manager in Adam Peters. You have a real coach in Dan Quinn, and changes are being made in the front office. As a matter of fact, I had a chuckle yesterday. David Moore, who covers the Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News, put out a tweet that said at Texas Stadium, AT&T Stadium, I guess, where they were trying to honor Tom Landry. They spelled Tom Landry, Landry, Laundry, Tom Laundry. And I just look at the outgoing president of the team here, Jason Wright, who has had one of those blunders after another, from the crest that they had, getting the Super Bowl years wrong, misspelling London Fletcher's name on the scoreboard, the ridiculous mannequin they trotted out to try and honor Sean Taylor, which has since been removed by new ownership. Maybe he might be a candidate to go there. His contract is up at the end of the season. He's still showing up at the games. I saw him at the game I went to, and I saw a picture of him yesterday at the game, but he's gone at the end of the season. Maybe the Cowboys could use him to continue that kind of mess. Ay, 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 ay. More from Dan Quinn coming up, and Jaden Daniels as we continue to look back at yesterday and look at what I think is a very positive outlook for the rest of the season, despite yesterday's loss. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So let's see if you can follow along with this logic. Even with the drop passes, the Zacchaeus muffs on the punts, one of them which resulted in a turnover, the costly penalties, including the one that ended the game, Washington still almost beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a really good team, and they're coming off a bye, and they have a coach in Mike Tomlin who eats rookie quarterbacks for lunch, and he did a job on Jaden Daniels. Daniels, 3 carries for 5 yards. That's not what he's been doing throughout the season, and for a change, he's not going to win Rookie of the Week. But I also think that after a loss like this, the glass may be more half full or closer to 3/4 full than it was going into the game. I know that's hard to get your head around, but those are the kind of things that you look at after a game like this, and, okay, it counts as a loss, and it counts the same as the Tampa Bay game, which, probably is their worst loss of the year. They lost the game on the road to a really good Baltimore team. And now they have an opportunity to still win 11 games for the first time since they won the Super Bowl in 1991. If they win 10, they're probably going to be in the playoffs. If they win 2 more games, if they go 2-5 the rest of the way, there's a chance that they could be in the playoffs. So, I don't know about the gloom and doom that comes out of this, and the people who are, that's it, they're going to collapse. Yeah, we've seen collapses before. 96, they were 7-1, and I thought they weren't that good. And Darryl Green, who at that point had played in 3 Super Bowls, winning 2, said, we're not that good. And they weren't. They finished 9-7 out of the playoffs. They got to 8-3 by beating the Eagles on the road, and they still missed the playoffs. In 2008, I never thought they were that good. And Jim Zorn was rolling snake eyes on some calls where he decided to go for it on 4th down. They were coming off a very bad, winning a very bad game against a very bad Detroit team. So 6-2. They played a Monday night game against the Steelers, who they showed up against wearing the same uniforms they wore last night, although there were the Redskins at the time, the burgundy on burgundy, where they looked like Dr. Pepper cans. And they got their tushies handed to them. They lost by a score of 23-6. And Mike Tomlin started off the game with an onside kick. In this game, he tried a fake punt deep in his own territory very early in the game. Didn't work. 2 different things. No respect in that first game. And a game full of Steeler fans. And there were a lot of Steeler fans yesterday. But remember, in 2008, they're coming off the Gibbs era. And they're coming off of a great feeling of the team. They had made the playoffs the year before, and it was kind of unusual to have the Steelers take over their stadium, or at least it felt that way. It wasn't that way yesterday, even though the Steeler fans were predominant there. They still had somewhat of a home field there, and they went. Look, Brian Arakpo in 2014, after they lost by 10 in a Monday night game against the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson as defending champs. He said, we went toe-to-toe. They didn't go toe-to-toe. Yesterday they went toe-to-toe, and they did it in a game that Dan Quinn thought would go kind of the way it did.
Heading into this game, really thought this was going to be a hard-fought game, and it was just like we expected. Bobby Wagner had spoken to the team earlier today about moments and opportunities, and I thought he was absolutely spot on because there were moments and there were opportunities. And so this one stings badly. The team is absolutely so all in for one another, and I love that about them, how tough we are. And so it should sting. And these are the ones that, you got to look back, you got to learn, and I also said we got to turn quickly.
Yeah, they got, 3 days now to get ready for Philadelphia on Thursday night at Philly. As far as learning, what he learned from this game?
Love what they stand for one another. And I don't know if I learned that, John, but it was confirmed again. And so I was hurting for him. The locker room's hurting. But there's also these lessons that we have to apply to know that we do have to learn from them and go on. And this just happens to be the lesson that comes back quickly as we get into our next game.
And if you watched the game yesterday on TV, Ian Eagle laid this out, the relationship between Dan Quinn and Mike Tomlin. Quinn was an assistant coach at William & Mary when Tomlin was a senior there, and he kind of helped him get into coaching after that. They've remained close ever since. They worked on the same staff a couple of times over the course of their careers, both in college and the NFL. And I think Quinn has made this pretty clear, even long before they played the Steelers, kind of when they went into the season, that the identity that they want to establish is very similar to what Pittsburgh has, what Tomlin has been able to do. And, boy, if you look at the two organizations, they could not be different. The stability that the Steelers have had in the coaching staff, where you've had 3 coaches ever since 1969, Chuck Noll, who's in the Hall of Fame, Bill Cowher, who's in the Hall of Fame, and Mike Tomlin, who will be in the Hall of Fame. That's something that is totally different than what we've had here. I mean, especially the Snyder era, one coach after another. And not that Dan Quinn's going to be here 15, 16, 17 years like Tomlin, but he hopes to be here for a while, and he hopes to establish what his good friend has been able to do in Pittsburgh. And that's why when you play a game like this, it's so important to the culture that he's trying to build.
This is a tough team. And I knew it was going to be a really hard fight, man. So I love him. I love what what he's about. So I knew it was going to be tough. We got a tough crew too, and so I wanted to make sure that we established, who we are too. And say we had to prepare for them, but they also had to make sure when we got to the game, like they also had to deal with us, and make sure we play physical and go after it and tackle. So we got lots of work to do, Nikki. But from an effort and mindset standpoint, we're gaining on that. And we're not where we're going to be, but we are gaining on that.
Yeah, and look, I've talked about the drop passes, the penalties, the things that they had where they had a chance to put this game away and couldn't do it. And Daniels articulated that very well after the game.
Anybody will say, you watch the film, that we missed some opportunities, so it was for sure something that we left out on the field, but it's nothing we could do about it now, but just move on to the next and get better.
I guess Sam Cosmi addressed the team after the game. What did you take from his message to you guys?
I mean, it hurts, and you can see that it hurts guys in the locker room. So, main thing is like, man, these guys care about winning, and it matters to them.
Sometimes the game it comes down to one big play or two, but this one it felt like maybe it was like the little things on either way that made the difference. You kind of feel that it was just the little things that kind of maybe got away today.
I mean, the little things always add up. Everybody sees just the one big thing and one big play, but it's the little things that add up. How we could have executed the drive before. Maybe, if we didn't kick a field goal in that second half, we go down and score, it'd be a different game. So it's just little things that always add up to the game. And I got to go back and watch the film and see where we're at with our details.
Is there one big thing that stands out to you that you learned today, or anything that you feel like you can take forward?
Playing good teams, man, you gotta capitalize on the opportunities, and that's for the whole team. They're a very good team, very good, well-coached team, and obviously it showed today.
And how are you feeling? And do you still feel any lingering effects from that rib injury?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's still there, but it's nothing that's holding me back. It's something that you gotta go day to day with.
But, Jay, one of the things Russell said was great organizations learn to love
not only the process, but they learn to love adversity.
Yeah.
And you guys this is an adverse week coming off a loss. You got a short week. You got to go to Philly. What do you expect to see from your guys during this week and getting ready for that game?
Just like he says, enjoy the process, love the process, learn to fall in love with it. Wins and losses are gonna happen in sports. I mean, everybody can't be perfect. It's somebody else's day that day. So, just how can we go back and bounce back? How can the guys shift their attitude from a loss to a short weekend? How can we go out there and get better for our Thursday night game?
And they can look at the team they beat last week, the Chicago Bears, 2 weeks ago, when they beat the Bears on the Hail Mary. Chicago hasn't scored a touchdown since. They probably have played themselves out of the playoffs, and it looks like Caleb Williams has regressed. How they respond to this is going to be very key. And, again, I think they have a chance to win in Philadelphia. 3.5-point underdogs, that's going to be tough, and tough place to play. But, you know, the Eagles played on the road yesterday, so they had to fly home last night and get ready for this game. Washington has played okay in these spots before. Different coaching staff, different quarterback, the whole thing. But it's all part of the Jaden Daniels growth here. And when they got the ball back yesterday after Pittsburgh scored the go-ahead touchdown on the pass to Mike Williams, I said this is where legends are born, something to that effect on Twitter, that, you know, this is the spot where quarterbacks become elite quarterbacks, that they can take the team down the field and score a touchdown or kick the winning field goal, and they came within inches of doing that. If that Zach Ertz fourth down play is called, you know, I don't know properly or what. It was really too close to call, and they did replay it, and they found that the call on the field was correct, that he came up just short. But if he gets that first down, maybe they do it, and the whole discussion is different. And I think that's where this team is headed. And going into yesterday, Nikki Jabala wrote a story about how the team is being viewed throughout the league. I mean, this was a laughingstock, this team, for decades. And even when they would have teams that were half decent, they would always overhype them. Dan Snyder in his first year with a team that was handed to him by some really shrewd moves by Charlie Casserly, and they won the division. He celebrated by putting up division champion banners at the facility when old-timers like Doc Walker say, would you like to check the trophy case and see the 3 trophies we got in there? And, you know, when they would have a playoff game at home like they had against Green Bay in 2016, and they lost that game, those teams weren't that good. This team maybe not that good yet, but it's going in the right direction, and it's going for long term, which is really key. And the whole franchise has turned, not just the coaches, the players, it's the way they conduct business. And I just remember a couple of years ago when Snyder still owned the team and Budweiser dropped its sponsorship. Budweiser, when a major beer manufacturer drops its sponsorship of an NFL team, which prints money, you know there's trouble. And Jason Wright said, oh, that's okay. That's good because we're going to have other beers there. Disaster. So, and Nikki Javala writing about how business is booming for Washington. She says the Commanders have signed 20 new partnership deals over the past year, and their home games have been all sold out this year. That has been no given in recent years. Now, you could say it was predominantly Steeler fans yesterday, but that hasn't been the case throughout the season. I was at the Bear game, and the Bear game had a lot more burgundy than it had navy blue and orange for the Bears. She writes, the Commanders say they have sold out every home game so far this season, and their total gate receipts are up nearly 20% over the past year. They boasted a 90% renewal rate in season tickets, according to a team spokesperson, and they hope for an even better return when the season ticket renewal notices go out in the coming weeks. Fans are arriving at the stadium early, staying longer, and buying more, according to the team's analysis. What's more, the home crowds have been composed primarily of Washington's own fans. Again, that was before yesterday and before that. And I remember Jason Wright a couple of years ago talking about how they had upped season tickets 180%, which just blew my mind because that told you how low the base was. I don't think he had a full understanding of how people used to fight over season tickets and divorces and wills. And it was down. I'm told that the base got down as low as 15,000 people. That's a season ticket base that came from RFK at like 55 something. I mean, they mostly sold season tickets. And then when they got the stadium up to 91,000, I'm sure it was well above that. And it just totally dissipated because of this dysfunction in the organization. Sam Cosme said the Commanders used a silent count at every home game last year because of the noise from the opposing fans. I don't know if they had to use it yesterday. They may have. They haven't had to do it once this season, and they hope it stays that way, even with the Steelers' towel-waving fans arriving Sunday. Yeah, the towel strategy was a good strategy from Brian Mitchell. He came up with this to give out burgundy towels, which they did. But I think the Steeler fans used those to blow their nose and use the terrible towels when the team was driving and trying to make a big stop. She writes, the team's success has changed Cosme's life in other ways, too. He recently received a free box of chicken at Raising Cane's, a sign that outside of the new $74 million contract and the team's winning record, the Commanders are relevant again. He said, they recognize me. I signed a hat and got a free box, he said. I mean, that's huge. And that was the Caniac, not just the regular box. Of the 20 new sponsorship deals the franchise signed over the past year, 21 are new regional partners. While increasing ticket revenue remains a work in progress, Washington's gate receipts are up 20% over the last year. Jaden Daniels was listed among the union's rising stars for the first quarter of 2024. When Players Inc. Top 50 list came out in the second quarter of the year, that's June to August. Remember, they hadn't played a game yet. Daniels will be number 34, ranking that seems certain to improve by the third quarter, September to November. The last Washington player to make a top 50 list, Chase Young, who was 42nd in 2022 and then was traded in 2023. So the needle is pointing up, and for all the hand-wringing and for all the oh, my God, it's ridiculous, it's not that way anymore. And when disgust turns to apathy, it's really over. And now you've got at least a little bit of disgust back. Like Johnny Newton shouldn't have jumped off sides. Benjamin St. Juste shouldn't have given up the winning touchdown pass. This stings. It hurts. Good. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be that way. And they only lost for the third time all year. They played 10 games, lost 3. That's pretty good. That usually keeps you in contention. And they're in contention, certainly for the division. They're a half game back, heading to Philadelphia on Thursday night. Ponder that on this Monday, and ponder a loss which shouldn't have everybody in a panic. Just calm down about that. The bottom is not going to fall out. More on that from Bram coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.